always outside of that sphere. He works as a librarian. He was a specialist in coins and medieval history. So he was a very unfashionable guy, but he managed to get.
And at the moment where you're bringing the voice author to the ground and speak about biography, it's super interesting, but it's a kind of like I always said this, but I often don't want to meet the artists I like, because I have this problem of, for me, I want to maintain it as a myth, and what is produced is detached. But of course it's more difficult with contemporary art. Okay, they are alive, you can still give them a chance of doubt. With dead people, you have all this data about their course in life. And often when I read an answer, I don't want to know this, but then when I know, I mean, I'm provocating you.
No.
But I'm wondering also about whether this is where the gutter mysticism lies, in the stories behind. We've got these ideas of what they wrote, and then we have these myths, these stories that we can all connect with about how they lived, or these certain things, like he worked in the library and wrote these pornographic novels by night, or Bart had this obsession with his mother, and like all these things, and that's sort of the subreal, or the thing that's beyond what they're trying to get us to think about. But what they're doing that goes against it, or is like, well, the thing that we can compare ourselves to, because how we live and how they lived is, you can kind of make a judgment, or it's all on a different level. And it seems to me something in the gutter mysticism in the stories, or
Thanks a lot. I don't know if this is all connected to history, because again, just to hit the head of the modern generation, we're terrible at dealing with history nowadays. We don't give enough credit to our ghosts and our historical neighbours, so to speak, with anything really. We're not curious about history nowadays, because we think we're really advanced, we're really modern, really clever, and that's why Twitter has revolutionised thinking, and bollocks, absolute nonsense. Social media has not really fundamentally changed all the questions we're asking about ourselves. So the first person to come along who would say, don't read biography, doesn't matter, enjoy the text, take the clothes off the stripper, is Roland Barthes. Roland Barthes himself would absolutely avoid it, just enjoy the fluidity of the text, the basically art for art's sake. I mean, it's a bit lazy to say that. I don't agree with him, I delightfully disagree with him. I think if you want to actually get underneath and enjoy more, you fall in love, you want to know about the background history of the person you're falling in love with, and learn more eventually about yourself. That's the true lesson of love. I'd never expected on a Saturday night to be talking about love in public to people. Isabel?
Well, I was just thinking as you spoke, are we saying perhaps that the transcendent element is the thing that they write, the text, and then the base stuff that they don't want to, that he wants us to see but doesn't want us to see, is the biographic detail, and that we are very tempted to make a separation ourselves. We find it's quite hard, isn't it, to, as you're saying, to marry the idea of a contemporary artist or a thinker and what they're actually like. And I think about someone like Roman Polanski, and the films are amazing, and then you know about him, and you're like, but now what? And then you're stuck.
So the obsession with biography should only be to provide, not gossip, because we could all talk about funny things that happened in whoever's life. Roland Barthes died after being run over by a laundry van, and he let himself die because his mother had died 2 weeks ago or something. Interesting gossip, right? But that's not what we're here to do. We're here to get some, transcendent, so to speak. So I think this is all about, lucky, to do with the sun and staring into the heart of creation. Okay, it's an ambitious project for Saturday night, but not just the sun, the rotten sun. This might take a bit of time to explain, so please bear with me. But our figures, okay, today we've had a guy step in, an invisible presence, Roland Barthes with Georges Bataille. Both probably would very much be very careful, very apprehensive of exploring biography and getting obsessed with the day-to-day lives of and that had become very unfashionable by the time they had passed away. I think people were into this kind of, and it's the first time, probably the only time I'm going to use this word, but the postmodern idea of simply referencing and taking and putting together with total disregard for origin and for history. But I think we've now come back, and I think postmodernism has exhausted itself. It already had exhausted itself, and postmodernism and our generation are arrogant enough to think that, well, our historical neighbours, our ghosts, the previous generations, they didn't know what they were doing. They were worshipping, they were using tarot, or they were fortune telling, or they were using strange herbal mixtures which killed themselves. Of course they did. They made mistakes. They didn't perfect things. But sorry, I'm losing myself a little bit here. But I think we're now at a point where we need to just listen to the modernists. The modernists were asking exactly the same questions we need to be asking right now. And in fact, the big genre, the big form of art that really, really feeds all of what I argue is subreal is noise. It's noise music, particularly Japanese noise music starting from the late 70s, which itself was avowedly surrealist, particularly the noise music of Mertzbei, or real name Masami Akita. The lowbrow, the pornography of music is noise, and if Bataille has given us anything, it's the idea that we forget high and lowbrow, or we mix them both, or by going low we reach the high, and there's some kind of transcendent echoing noises that we can attain, I guess. So I'm going to come back to try to pin this down by talking about the sun. As we had the solar anus from the previous essay of Bataille, but the last thing I'll reference from Bataille today, and I will tie it up in about 5-10 minutes, is a little slip of Bataille's essay, Rotten Sun. And I mentioned the sun earlier as being, of course, the source of all creation. It's an impossibility. We can't look at it. We shouldn't look at it. Yet we, and for most of human history, have worshipped it. The sun, from a human point of view, is the most elevated conception. It is also the most abstract object, since it is impossible to look at fixedly at any time of day. If we describe the notion of the sun in the mind of one whose weak eyes compel him to emasculate it, that sun must be said to have the poetic meaning of mathematical serenity and spiritual elevation. If, on the other hand, one stubbornly focuses on it, a certain madness is implied. He talks a lot about Van Gogh having stared at the sun before he cut his own ear off and sent it to a prostitute. But refuse or combination or combustion adequately expressed by the horror emanating from a brilliant arc lamp. In practice, the scrutinized or the observed sun can be identified with a mental ejaculation, foam on the lips, and an epileptic crisis. I'll just repeat that. In practice, the observed sun, or the scrutinized sun, can be identified with a mental ejaculation, foam on the lips, and an epileptic crisis. This brings me to bodily knowledge, corporeal knowledge. Knowledge that comes from you is a kind of chemical that oozes, that bursts through or drips, either by accident or deliberately, through dreams or active meditation or the consumption of psychedelic drugs. In the same way that the preceding sun, the one not looked at, is perfectly beautiful, the one that is scrutinized, the one that is viewed, can be considered horribly ugly. It's not a long essay. It goes on to talk about gross violence, but to go, in my view, to go into historical biography, to go into finding the details of the dangerous task of going into historical detail is like staring at the sun. It's very, very dangerous, and it can produce some kind of innate ejaculation or dripping or oozing or seeping that goes beyond your own possibility of modifying your ideas. So you'll come to conclusions that you don't want to, that are innate, and that could be its own kind of sub-realist thoughts. So to finish, and I promise you I will finish today, I'm going to just jump onto two things. The first thing is, when we come into staring at the sun and historical validity within literature and so on, what I'd like to say is this. We should inhabit that risk. We should completely jump into that difficulty of weaving an historical interpretation. In the same way that, as a Brit living abroad, I should inhabit the cliche of being British, but maybe to use a more contemporary phrase, to queer it, so to speak. So by being uber British, you're actually more British than, say, people living in England, but you're queering the idea of British. So you're exploring the actual innate qualities of what Britishness means, or being British means, but you're outlining that itself is a kind of historical construct, and it's kind of very arbitrary. I'll give you I've laboured the point, but give you one example. Tea being fundamentally British. The British can't get up in the morning without having their strong dose of tea. It's actually true. The British are completely mad about it. It's our own form of basically porridge.
Yeah.
Porridge as well.
My God.
I'm on a keto diet now. I can't touch that. Porridge is or any Portuguese please? Papa? Oh, porridge.
Baby vomit.
Porridge.
Very difficult to clean the pot.
I have to say, we'll leave that to the Scots. I'm not going to tread on their oats. I'm going to just talk because you can. The thing about porridge is it's native because of the climate, and you can only grow rye and oats and wheat and stuff. Where does tea come from?
I thought you don't like it. Now it's clear.
Well, I don't like it because it's Scottish, and I hate every single Scottish person, obviously, as a proud Brit, as a proud Englishman. No, of course not. What I'm saying is that these ideas are completely arbitrary. Of course, the seed of the oats came. Hello, Cass. Can I finish my thought and then I'll get back to you? Thank you. It's good. We're going to work out something good here. We have little lights going on. The seed of the oat grain probably swept in from the Carpathian Mountains or somewhere far away near Romania. Nothing's really inherently Scottish, nothing's really inherently English. I just think tea is a good example. Sorry, we'll come back to you in a second. Because it's Chinese! We stole it off the Chinese. You Portuguese claim to originate tea. It's half true. We'll talk about Captain Braganza after the lecture. But the point is, an inherently British thing couldn't have happened without the violence of colonialism, couldn't have happened without the exploitation of the Bengalis, the Sri Lankans, the mass plantations over stolen land and so on. But let's inhabit that. Let's look at that historical reality. Let's look into that stunt, do the impossible, and inhabit the cliche and queer it and make it our own and demonstrate that this is all completely nonsense in the first place. We should celebrate, maybe in that kind of open way that postmodernists would do, celebrate the superficiality of cultural traits. Thank you for your patience, Cass.
I withdraw the point before I make it. Do go on, please.
I've come to a full stop, and I'll talk about Joanna for a second. But did you had something?
No,
to
I'm trying to keep with the theme of the lecture about porn. I was pointing out that porridge is frequently used in porn films. So I read.
Porridge is used in porn as a kind of replacement substance.
So I read. How would
Having never watched a porn video for about 3 hours, I have never seen porridge porn, pornage, or any form of oat-influenced erotic matter. Has anyone seen porn in porridge?
Porridge.
I
Way
look into a
round.
bowl of porridge and it's very pornographic.
Is your bag of porridge pornographic?
I know in the Deuce, the TV series, for a scene they use porridge.
Really?
About
Is
the
that,
porn
which,
industry,
is
yeah.
that the second season? I don't know.
Probably, well, yeah.
I didn't see it, 'cause I like the juice. Yeah.
But I remember they have a scene where they have like a syringe. I don't know if it's porridge.
That's from Vindicated.
Oh, well,
Cass is right.
yeah, totally. I mean, that whole
Cass is
industry.
on point.
Who is it? Someone was telling me that it was. Was it you, Lise?
Okay.
I don't want to point the finger because, like,
Sorry?
someone here is really knowledgeable
without
about
the
porn.
needle. Just
Porn?
the emblem.
Porn.
the emblem.
I don't know who it is. Sorry, I don't mean
Corn?
to. Corn. No, but it's someone I met here, and they say, "Oh, porn is a German thing," and they really perfected it in the 70s. Then went to New York, and talking of good recent series, The Deuce, talking about the lives of prostitutes, pimps in I guess
juice.
70s New York, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, hello.
Orange juice.
Orange juice. Orange juice.
The series The Juice, orange juice.
Orange, very, very good.
There's no way I can kind of tie that into what I'm about to say. But 1970s New York being a brilliant place of filth and all of that no wave and new wave stuff being, well, maybe an expression of the subreal as well. Finally, just to move on from porridge, oats and porn, how did we get there? Joanna Baeza, it brings me joy to just kick off the second lecture, which will be in 2 weeks. Is that right? On the 7th of February? I believe that's exactly 2 weeks, and it's going to be before a gig, so we have something fun to dance to. I'm just going to put on the radio, but Joanna Baeza made a really fantastic book. So fantastic, I don't know the name by heart. It's Bruma. Bruma is like mist, right?
Bruma, yes. Like
Mist, fog, Bruma. It's on a really, really special comic book, public, what do you say? Editor? Editora. Yeah. What do you say in English? People who publish things are publishing house. Chili con Carne, or Chili con Carne, who is based right by your house, by the way, in the Olivais Biblioteca das Bandas Desenhadas, or the Biblioteca Joana Bruma. Now, fica Olivais. Your apology is accepted, Gemma. So, getting a bit into her stuff, I really see, not just in her, she's just one of many, but in particularly very, very new comic books. This idea of seepage and globular figures, squashy ideas, piercing, disgust. I hear it a lot in modern experimental dance music, particularly of Lisbon's Rotten Fresh label, which is based not so far away, made by basically a bunch of kids in the area. They must have played here a few times. Joanna Baeza, I think, explores real deep subreal territories. Okay, I don't want to classify her and pin her down and force this label onto her, but I think it's nice to think about her as a kind of erotic transcendent, or a kind of base mysticism. So I think I will just sort of give this round and allow you all to enjoy, I would say, possibly quite a psychedelic visual form, and encourage you all to go to Olivais on the red line of the metro and see for yourselves in the very, very wonderful modern collection of the Biblioteca, or the Biblioteca das Bandas Desenhadas, some of these borderline psychotic, psychedelic, seeping, cutting, globular, spitting images, which are part of this dream world of a modern generation, all unconsciously tapping into the subreal, into the inner alchemy of gutter mysticism. I'm going to end there. This has been a really long lecture, so thank you so much, and please come next week, please. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Let's put on some music. Oh, okay. That's a long lead. Oh, right.
Will you be putting the recording online?
I'm going to edit the hell out of it to make it look much better than it was.